right, guys, we're down to the final two. Number 2 on my list goes to none other than the original Green Ranger, Tommy, in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Now, it doesn't do Tommy justice to just speak about him as the Green Ranger on account then he was then a White Ranger, and then he was a Red Ranger, and then I think he was a Black Ranger, and then if you're counting Draken, he was whatever the heck Draken was, Ranger 2, which was white/green kind of mix, but evil. Anyway, Tommy is a legend, and he played so many legendary Ranger colors, but that Green Ranger, when I saw the Dragon Zord for the first time and how he could play a flute through a helmet, which I still don't understand, but it worked and he did it. I never questioned it as a kid until someone pointed it out as an adult, and I'm like, even as an adult, that still doesn't break the magic, because if anyone could play through a helmet, it was Tommy.
What are we gonna do now? I just remembered I left the oven on.
And the Dragon Zord being like Godzilla, but like Mecha Godzilla, but better than Mecha Godzilla in a way, and like shooting little missiles out of its fingers. The fact that not only did he take out the entire Mighty Morphin team when he was evil and kicked them all out of the Megazords, and that caused like trauma to every kid. They're like, no, my team's getting beat up by this one dude. But then when he joined the team, and then he was able to help the other Rangers by giving his shield as a source of power, then we're getting into the idea of like, you know, 2 Pokemon fusing to become a stronger Pokemon. And that's what it kind of reminded me of. Or like, you know, Megazord, like swapping out pieces. So like, we need the Green Ranger piece to add on to the Black Ranger piece. And then he could do that. And he did. And it was awesome. And then when he got to become the White Ranger, and I loved the Tiger Zord. I used to pretend as a kid running up the stairs on all fours that I was the White Tiger Zord. And then he got the Falcon Zord. I mean, his Zords were legit. Those 3 alone are some of my favorite. I had the honor of meeting Jason David Frank, may he rest in peace, a couple different times at different conventions. And the first time I met him was at San Diego Comic-Con when they were doing like promotion for Beast Morphers. It was at like a breakfast or something that Hasbro was putting on. And I introduced myself to Jason, and I was like, hi, Jason, I'm also a Power Ranger from this. And you know, he could totally ignore me. He's like the Ranger, and I'm just a Ranger. And he's like, oh, nice to meet you. And then he's like, let's take a picture together with the Beast Morpher cast. So I have a photo where he like set up how he wanted it to look. And you see us all lined up in some epic pose with the in-suit Rangers and then him and I. And then I was like, oh, so I have an album in my phone where I do a handstand on every Power Ranger I meet. Would you be okay if I do a handstand on you? And again, first time meeting this guy. And he's like, oh yeah, that's fine. And so he let me do a handstand on him. So obviously, for so many reasons, Tommy is absolutely phenomenal. He is a legend. He is probably the most well-known Ranger. If you ask anyone, they're like, oh, Power Rangers? Yeah, they think of like Tommy, right? So that's why Tommy is number 2 on my list. All right, guys, we've made it to number 1 in my esteemed top 10 Ranger list. And that honored spot goes to none other than Tyler Navarro, the Red Ranger in Power Rangers Dino. I'm just kidding, guys. Don't worry about it. No, I'm not putting myself at number 1. I mean, I could in another list. But no, number 1 actually goes to Wes, the Red Ranger in Power Rangers Time Force. So as I mentioned earlier in this video, Yoshi had our cast watch, or recommended that we watch Power Rangers Time Force while we were filming Dino Charge in New Zealand. And I just clicked with the energy that Jason Font brought to Wes's performance. And I actually had a journal that I was writing because one of my acting coaches talked to me a lot about having backstory for your characters. You know, that it's important to not only have what's on the page, but have depth, like what makes your character act the way they do, or speak the way they do, or move the way they do, or think the way they do. And now I also wanted to have different personalities to pull from that were strong, heroic type characters. So Tom Welling, his performance in Smallville was someone I pulled from because that was a big influence on my life when I was younger. I loved Tom Welling. But one of the other people I wrote in that journal that I wanted Tyler's energy to be similar to was Wes, or Jason Font's performance in Time Force. So if you go back and watch Time Force and Dino Charge, let me know if you can pick up on some of the energy similarities. I wasn't trying to copy anyone's performance, but it influenced how I wanted Tyler to be played. And so Wes, you know, at first he was kind of reluctant. He was like the son of a wealthy person. He wasn't really into like the whole Power Ranger thing at first, but then he steps up to the plate when he needs to. You know, and he also played 2 people. He played his ancestor in the future, and then he got to play himself in the present, and then his thing with Jen back and forth going in time. It was just, I just thought Time Force was so well done, and he did such an amazing job playing that role. And I've got to meet him multiple times at different conventions, and he always gives me wisdom if I have any questions about you know, career advice or conventions or just life advice. You know, even being a dad now, he, tells me like, work will always be there when you need it, but spend time with your family, it matters more. And like, just things that a lot of people will be like, yeah, go after that money. And he's like, no, like family, man. One of my favorite episodes with Wes is, I believe, was it the finale where him and Dan Southworth, who played the Quantum Ranger, were like in the clock tower and like they got, basically at the end of every season of Power Rangers, their base gets destroyed. And so it's getting flooded by monsters and they have like a 2-on-1,000,000 bad guy henchmen fight. And I just love that scene. But aside from that, just his energy throughout each episode and his reaction and interaction with his cast members and just how authentic it felt. Because he was like a happy guy, but it was still grounded in reality. And I think a lot of people, they look at Power Rangers and they're like, it's such a campy show and it's so unbelievable. The circumstances are unbelievable versus reality, but it's still, if you have a good actor in the role, they still make it believable if that was actually happening to them. And that's what I think he did really well. Even though it was extraordinary circumstances, I was still able to believe that it was actually occurring to his character. So I know I didn't put my own Red Ranger in my list of top 10 favorite Power Rangers, but I'm curious, where would you put Tyler? Would he make your own top 10? And speaking of lists, watch me react to Watch Mojo's top 20 Red Rangers and see where I rank.